All right, welcome to the M6P Back to Books, and we are here to discuss Avengers Arena. All right, John, you just lead it off.
All right, guys, we're talking about Avengers Arena, which came out in 2012. It is an 18-issue series. It wasn't ongoing, but it ended at 18 issues. And it was written by Dennis Hopeless, with one issue written by Christos Gage. Most of the art is done by Kev Walker, with a few issues by Alessandro Vitti, a couple by Riccardo Buccelli, and two by Carl Moline, not Carl Malone. He did not play for the Utah Jazz. And this is a series that takes young characters from all the Marvel universes, from throughout the Marvel universe, throws them on an island. They were abducted by Arcade, thrown on an island he calls Murder World, and they were said they're going to fight it out for 30 days until there's only one remaining. There are lots of twists and turns, a couple of gruesome deaths, and some love making, as Jared is pointing out. and it was a story that I want to know what you guys thought, and we want to know what each other thought. So let's go with first takes. Has anybody read this story before, or was this all of our first time through? I've read it before based on an M6P post where it actually, you guys asked what people thought, and a lot of the followers of our page seemed to enjoy it. So I checked out a few issues and kept reading. How about you, Darrin? When did you like it?
This was
Or
my
when did
first,
you start?
yeah, this was my
Go ahead.
first time. I started it on Saturday. I read about 10 issues, and then I finished the other 8 today.
Nice.
So it was a little spread out. Um, I know I'm probably supposed to say it was halfway decent, but I didn't, it wasn't for me. I'll leave it at that, and I'm sure we'll get deeper into it.
Sure.
I'll start with that. It wasn't for me.
Yeah.
Um, I think Dennis Hopeless tried, and that's how I felt reading it. Hopeless. So I'll leave it at that. Next.
Yeah. When you take a name like that, you're going to get those comments.
I know it was easy.
Matthew,
Easy. It was easy.
that's all right. It's not going to be the last one, I'm sure. Matthew, had you read this before? Were you interested in reading this before, or you just,
As
what the heck are we
Darren said,
reading?
hopeless. It was low hanging fruit for Darren to take, but it was worthwhile to take. They always take that low hanging fruit. Zero Judgment Zone. This is my first read through. Never heard of it. Didn't know anything about it. So when Darren was like, "Get reading," thank you for the Marvel Unlimited. I finally hopped in there. Power read. I read 8 last night. The rest throughout the day today. So I fire hydranted all of these, and I am going to go back and reread them slower. However, I thoroughly enjoyed everything. I know that's a little bit of an overarching synopsis coming off Darren, but it was something I'd never read before, brand new to me. Liked all the characters that they included, enjoyed the art, enjoyed a lot of the dialogue. Um, I thought we'll get into it more, but just the kind of grittiness of it, I hadn't seen that from a lot of the younger characters. A lot of the verbiage and the way they talked, I hadn't seen stuff like that from the younger characters. A lot of the violence, I hadn't seen like that from some of these characters that hadn't been shown before. So it was new to me, fun to me, exciting to me, caught me off guard a lot of times with some of the things that happened. I was like, whoa, did not expect this or that. So there was a lot of newness to me and a lot of surprises. I felt like I kept getting caught off guard with surprises, and they were fun but shocking. I was like, ooh, couple revoltings, couple wilds, couple. So I did enjoy it. I did enjoy it.
Good. We got opposite ends of the spectrum there. So let's go in the middle. Jared, how about you? Who posted this on M6P that said, what did you guys think? Were you guys just feeling
Wasn't
out
me.
because
No,
nobody
it
else
wasn't
read
me.
it?
That one was Jared.
I posted it when it originally came out, when the series originally came out. I went back and I did a search, and I had posted saying what people thought because I was reading it and loving it. Really, really enjoyed this. And then Darren and I are always looking for new content. Like, I haven't posted about Avengers Arena, and that was a really good series. Let's see if it still holds up, 10 years later. Which is crazy. It was that long ago. So posted it again, got some good feedback, and John said, "Hey, let's do this show." But yeah, this is my second read through. Definitely an enjoyable read for me. I very much enjoyed it and look forward to talking about it.
All right, Kevin, are you gonna split the difference, or are we gonna all go on Jared or on Darren's hopelessness and say he's wrong? What did you
Uh,
think of this?
I think we're about to tell Darren how wrong he is.
Oh, here we
Um,
go.
so I had read the first few issues back when the series first came out, maybe the first three or four, and just dropped off it. It just didn't grab my attention back then. But reading it now for this, I will say I think last time I did a lot more homework than everybody else. So this time I only read the first two volumes. That's all I was able to get through. Um,
Oh,
but
so good.
I wanna finish it. I'm gonna finish that last volume. I'm not. It's not great. It's not the best thing ever, but it is a very fun read. I think at the time, I think I'd recently watched Battle Royale. I think everybody was talking about the Hunger Games, and that was really popular. And I think I was just kind of burnt out on kids killing each other, and so not not being involved in that for, at least in terms of fiction, not being inundated with that in the past 10 years has kind of cleansed my palate. And it's kind of like a Ryan Reynolds. Like every 10 years I can take something from him. So I think that 10-year palate cleanse, yeah, I enjoyed it.
Good. Well, we'll probably end up spoiling some of it for you, Kevin, for the last volume. But let's get into the characters. There's 16 characters, well, 16 heroes thrown on the island. There's a couple other characters, including the villain, but we'll talk about him separately. Of the heroes, of the 16 heroes that come in, it's interesting because they pull from almost every corner of the Marvel universe. It seems like Wolverine School, they make one comment that it was almost impenetrable, and that's why he didn't abduct anybody from there. Though we do get X-23 because she was actually with the Avengers Academy around the time of this, which had just finished up their ongoing series in time to start this. So, of these characters, Jared, we'll start with you this time. Um, are there any characters you liked more after reading this, or you disliked more after the reading this, or you want to see more of, you never seen before? Because some of these were made for this. I think what is it, the Braddock Academy? Those characters did not exist outside Death Locket. This was her first appearance, but then the Avengers Academy people, obviously, they were from that. X-23. The Sentinel was a limited series that came out about 5 or 6 years before this with the Kid and the Sentinel. So again, we're pulling from all corners. Anything you liked, didn't like? What characters stood out to you? Who do you want
Yeah,
to see more?
I'm not a big fan of teenage characters at all. So I'm really surprised that I enjoyed this. But what they did, because I never liked Avengers Academy, Wolverine and the X-Men, I wasn't interested in what the kids were doing. I wanted to see what Wolverine and his teachers were up to. So I think they took like probably the best characters they could find from those, Avengers Academy, and they made up the rest from the Braddock Academy, put them in here. Uh, as I already knew Darkhawk, I knew X-23, that kind of stuff. But Death Locket kind of stood out to me. I thought it was a fun. I liked how you kind of got everybody's origin throughout this. And it wasn't all in the first issue. You'd be in issue 16 and, oh, we're just now getting an origin for this character. But he very much piecemealed it and didn't throw it all at you at once. So you were discovering about these characters as the 18 issues went on. And Deathlocket had a great little 2-page origin story. I liked how she was possessed and taken over, and yet she was struggling the whole time to try and get out and be a hero, and then got buried for it. I liked her and Hazmat. I think Hazmat was fun visually. I really like Radioactive Man. One of my favorite visuals to look at, the glowing green skin and the bright yellow star, and so Hazmat was very much like that, and to see her personality change throughout, where she was in love, and then she was crazy, and then she was flippant and just didn't care about anything. So I think she had a really good arc. Those two stood out to me.
Nice, nice. Kevin, who do you like? Who don't you like? In the story, not us.
Darrin, John, Jared, don't like you guys. Okay. I don't know you well enough, Matt, to mock you. Um, so one thing I was really shocked about is how much I liked Cammi in this, because we had
Yeah,
just talked about in Annihilation
sure
how
we
she
did.
was like, what is this character here for? I liked her. She was kind of just dry, and she was just very logical and cynical, and I
Yeah,
just thought she was really well written. She wasn't like a quip machine or anything like that, and I really appreciate it. I think that's what I liked, is like nobody in here is a quip machine. Like nobody in
no,
here is just constantly making quips and constantly joking. They understand the gravity of what they're in. I like the fact that this is a very diverse cast of characters, and it's not in this like forced diversity that we get a lot of times. And I'm not like one of those everything's woke guys. I am not one of those guys, but a lot of times you get like a team and everybody has to be some type of queer, and you're like, that's not the real world. Like if you have a team of
right,
characters, yeah, somebody might be queer, somebody's going to be this color, somebody's going to be of this creed, somebody's going to be have these type of different personalities, and this is a really fleshed out diverse cast, and I think it just made it interesting because it makes the drama that much more real and grounded, because these people are going to have interpersonal conflicts because they are diverse. And I yeah, so I mean, like there wasn't a character that I didn't like. um I was really surprised how much I like Cammi, and yeah, Hazmat was great. And I was always a fan of the Runaways. So yeah, Nico is great in this too. I enjoyed her.
right. Matthew, who do you like?
You may tease me for being, Matt, you're always a glass half full, you're always the optimist guy, but there was no one that I disliked. I really enjoyed this entire roster. To Jared's point, as a noob coming into this, all the backstories were so helpful, super enjoyable to read. A lot of the backstories felt fresh to me. So, I read each backstory super excited, really like, oh man, I can't wait to see this, can't wait to read this, can't finish to read this, and then let alone all of the issue stuff. You get the backstory in each issue. So each issue I enjoyed everyone's backstory. The ones that caught me off guard that I didn't know that I would enjoy as much as I thought, when I kind of learned the reveal on Apex, I was like, wow, that just blew my mind. Not knowing being new to this, the Apex blew my mind. That was super excited. I was at the beginning watching, I enjoyed Metal at the beginning, and then just watching him get wasted early. I was kind of like, oh shoot, I really wanted to see a little bit more. So I was really actually kind of bummed about that early wax. Um, I mean, Deathlock, it was, I enjoyed everyone's backstory, and I enjoyed everyone's powers. Like, to what was spoken before, the diversity of powers. It wasn't like, it was just enjoyable watching the backstories, the differences in powers, the way they interacted. I will say the only person that I quote unquote didn't like, but he served his purpose and I did like him. It's like, the actor who played Joffrey, right? He played his role so well that everyone hated him. So even though you hated him, he's a great actor. And watching Kid Britain just get waxed, I was like, yeah, oh yes. I was like, you totally, absolutely. So there was, I would say if I had to pick someone, Kid Britain, but he served his purpose, and he was still a good character, even though it was enjoyable watching that.
Right, right. Now, Darrin,
Yes.
did you like anybody,
Yeah,
or was
no, okay,
everybody
hold
intolerant?
on. I said like I tried, like I know I should like it back then, when I was going over my spiel. But no, as a whole, no, this isn't one of my more enjoyable reads. But I kept reading it. Like I will say that. But there are some characters I did enjoy. I really, really enjoyed Arcade in this a lot. He's just crazy maniacal, kind of like the guy running the show and everything. Um, just a fun part of this, and it's a classic character. I actually knew.
Yeah,
Uh, X-23. I was rooting for her every time she got that trigger sent. I'm like, get him! End this now! Come on! And she just couldn't do it, so I was a little upset about that. Other than that, I really liked her. I did like Hazmat as well. I thought that was an interesting character. I like Nico a lot, and I'm actually not wasn't a whole lot familiar with her prior to this, so but I thought she was a good character. Deathlock, it was pretty cool. It did have some good characters and stuff, but it just seemed very drawn out overall for me, and I think that's my biggest disdain with it. And I didn't need to hear every single one of their backstories in a whole issue. Not every
Right.
single one. Some's fine, but not all.
Right. Okay. Well, yes, I agree with you guys. You get a lot of the characters. Hazmat seemed to be a star of the show. X-23 was great. Cammi was much better than she was in Annihilation. The time served with the Badoon actually did her well. You know, she toughened up and became more like the Drax that she was palling around with in Annihilation. That version of Drax. Who else? I'd say maybe what's his name? Justin Seifert. I don't know why he spells Justin with an O, but he would be one of the less developed characters. I didn't read that miniseries. I don't know if there was something compelling about him, but they didn't really strike on that here. It was just more of bringing a sentinel to the island so that other people can use it as a weapon. Like like Matthew said, I like some of the characters like Apex and Kid Britain were not likable, but they were good in their bully to villainous ranges. With that said, Darrin, you touched on Arcade. He's come a long way from trapping people in pinball machines. With this one, he's nigh omnipotent.
Yeah.
What did you think of that? You're an Arcade fan, you said. So how did you like the way he was portrayed here? He had one issue that was almost entirely devoted to him with his re-origin story, we'll call it, because he was obviously had already existed, but why he came about and did this. So you kind of hit on that a little. Anything you want to say in addition to that about Arcade?
I think one of the reasons that I really liked this was because even though it still had the classic feel of them, it was quite different. I guess to what your point is, in a little bit. Much more of an evil genius. Just really, really well thought out. Just that unstoppable force, and kind of like even though he's the villain, they were the villains themselves. So it was just a whole interesting kind of dynamic between how his role was in this compared to some of the other storylines, and that caught my attention.
Right. And Jared, as our long-haired, smiling man on the board, what did you think of Arcade with his long
Yeah.
hair and smile?
Oh, well, no, see, I have my version has the short hair,
Right.
but no, so Arcade, I don't know about you guys, we're about the same age. My first exposure to Arcade was the video game, Spider-Man and the X-Men with Arcade. And yet I never saw him on the cartoon, but I saw him early in my comic book journey. So Arcade in my mind has always stuck as he's a big deal because he was one of the you meet Sentinels, Magneto, and then I go to the video store and Arcade. He's the main villain in this video game. He must be a big deal. So it's always been hard for me to drop that. But when I look at the comic books, he's a one-off. He'll go and throw the X-Men in a pinball and then go on his way, and he'll get X-Force and go on his way, and Spider-Man go on his way. So he never really had, I think, this time to shine. He still has only been in X-Men Evolution animated, and that he was just a teenager. He wasn't like this maniacal villain. So this, I think, was his time to put his stamp on the Marvel Universe. I captured all of the superhero children, threw them into the Hunger Games under your noses, and he kind of put his stamp on the Marvel Universe. So I really enjoyed that. I would have enjoyed even more behind the scenes with him as he was going through the game. We did have a whole lot of him not being there. He was there at the beginning and more so there at the end. But we didn't have a lot of that middle ground. But I love me some Arcade. Love Arcade.
All right, and Kevin?
Not to interrupt real quick, but wasn't that a cool
Go ahead.
panel, the initial panel where I just like to watch people die and he's kind of trickling, jumping down, and it's got all the teens all sitting around up there, and he just like,
Right.
this is how it's starting. Here we go. That was crazy. Yeah.
Yeah. I also liked how every time they showed somebody, they would have like a health meter next to their name whenever they were fighting, that was a very good of like just Arcade's view of what's going on. But go ahead, Kevin, you tell us your thoughts on Arcade in general and here.
So in general, I'm a lot like Jared, where my first exposure was the Spider-Man and X-Men game, right? Yeah, Arcade's Revenge. So yeah, that was my first experience, and I remember having a very hard time swinging from a web with Spider-Man. I remember that being a very struggle in that opening level. That being very frustrating. Um, so never beat Arcade in that game. But in terms of the comics, yeah, uh he was always kind of a joke character, like, and I liked how they brought that into this series, where he's a man with a huge bruised ego, and he's just trying to get one W. That's all he really wants. It's just a history of L's, and he's just trying to get a single W. And there is something strangely like sympathetic about that, like how much of a because they made him such a loser. I mean, they also made him evil and awful, but he's kind of like a loser, and you're like, yeah, just kill one of them, dude. Yeah, sure, yeah. Get your one W, and then let Captain America come in and smash your face in. But just get that one W first. So no, I like how he was written. I think it was well done. I enjoyed him as the villain of this series. Did he continue on in the undercover after this, or
He
is
did.
this the end of his
So,
story? Okay.
um, yeah, in Avengers Undercover, which was not part of the homework assignment, but he's part of the Masters of Evil, I think, and that's kind of why these teens go undercover to find him because, like we said, we'll spoil some things. He escapes before before the end of this one, and then he publishes everything. That's the very end of the story. Is him putting online what he had recorded, which is kind of whatever they call YouTube in the Marvel universe, getting millions of clicks and getting him that win. He actually won because right before that, the kids all make a pact. Hey, we're never going to talk about this. We're not going to let Arcade win. This is going to be our secret forever. And then it ends with him hitting
Yeah.
upload now, and 10 million people later they find out. So, Matthew, your thoughts on Arcade? Were you familiar with him from video games or not too
I
many
was familiar.
cartoons? Like Jared
Yeah,
said,
I
I'm
I was
surprised.
familiar for video games, just like both the gentlemen before me. However, it had just been so long since he had entered my mind, so it was again just like everyone a full refresh for me, and it was interesting, watching his kind of pre-story about being this guy with this cash and kind of having these kind of weird fetishes and this weird lifestyle, but not understanding or having this understanding of what what the consequences could be, and then watching kind of him host that party and him not realizing the way people view him and see him, it was kind of crushing, right? Because in some
Yeah,
way, all of us, whether we were younger or older or at work or at a lunch table, all of us have had that experience in life where you're around people who you think are your friends or whatever, and you say a couple goofy things, right? And then you're like, wait a second, everyone's teasing me. And it's kind of like this sympathetic moment where you're like, I feel for him a little bit, as weird as it is, because he thinks he's hosting a whole bunch of buddies. And you're like, oh, that poor guy. But then at the same time, too, he's maniacal, right? So it kind of, it does, you kind of, juggle that thing. But, he has that humanity, that humanity to him that we can all kind of tie back to, right? But seeing the origin story and just seeing all the ways that he evolved and then what he became, and then him kind of getting away last laugh was a great arc to watch. I think Darrin called it out well. That we listed all the characters on the roster that we liked, and Arcade was one that I don't think any of us talked about except for Darrin. I was like, good call out right there. He was a fun watch as well.
nice, nice. Yeah, uh, I like that, especially the scene when he had his own issue and Constrictor finds him in the bar and he's going to rob him, and Arcade's like, "Just go ahead, I don't care." He's done, and until he's knocked down, about to be killed, and he looks up at the ceiling. He remembers, of course, he put a giant hammer up there. Let me just have him press a button and hammer himself to the wall. And then he's like, he got his mojo back from one of his old hack tricks he forgot about. But yeah, he's good in this, and he is himself. And it's right, the murder world. It's like instead of Disneyland, it's Disney World. Instead of just a murder arcade pinball cabinet, it's murder world. It's a whole Antarctic World, which let's talk about Murder World. What did you guys think of that as a premise? Did that work for you? Was it too over the top? Do you believe Arcade is, I guess he had Miss Coriander doing most of the, not the smartest person in the Marvel history, right? So they're coming up with some pretty big time things to put all these superheroes out. Did you have to, I mean, it's a comic book, so we always suspend our disbelief, but do you think this was too far with that, with the Murder World, or you're all right with it? It's just par for the course. What do you think of it, Jared?
Yeah, it was just Hunger Games basically, and
Right.
Hunger Games was hot when this came out, so I was cool with it. I thought it was a new twist on Murder World. It wasn't a pinball machine. It wasn't an abandoned factory that Arcade refurbished where he got his money. Who knows? This was kind
That,
of
they
cool.
say. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's just kind of cool, a different take on it. I had something that I was going to say and I just forgot what it was. So if I come back to it, I will interrupt someone and say it.
No problem. Matt, be prepared to be interrupted. What did you think of Murder World?
Again, I am not trying to be Matt the Forever Optimist, but I enjoyed it. It was one of those things that I hadn't, kind of like the Hunger Games thing. I haven't dived into or watched anything related to that topic, that type of thing. I mean, unless we kind of, maybe go back to not the same thing, but X-Men '97 with Jubilee, right? Kind of getting sucked into the game and everything, and kind of, aside from that episode, I haven't lived in that world for a while. So it felt new to me. It felt fresh to me. And, them not being able to kind of escape, them not being able to get communications out, only later on, way, way, way later on, kind of finding out that the game might be up with, Hank Pym getting onto it and kind of, giving the reader that sense of hope that, whoa, they may get a bailout, they may get a lifeline, right? Giving you that either true or false hope, was leaving that so later on into the issues, right? It really made everything with the kids feel kind of perilous. So I did enjoy the scene. I enjoyed the setting, and it felt realistic. Like there was no chance that they were going to get bailed out, and it was going to be survival of the fittest, and only one may make it out. I kind of, I didn't think that would be the ending, but it felt like that could be the ending the way that I read it. They gave me good, they kept me hooked.
Right. Yeah. The people were dying and people were disappearing and all of the things were happening to give you enough to feel that real tension that you wanted to.
Yeah.
Darrin, fan of Murder World? Would take your kids there for the summer or what?
No, probably not. Probably not. Yeah, the Hunger Game. I mean, this storyline, this whole idea is something that's been played throughout tons of media throughout the history. And so right off the bat, I was like, all right, that's where they're going, all right, we're going with this angle and everything. Um, I think maybe that's one of the reasons initially was my biggest beef, that it just got kind of redundant and everything. I don't know. Just like, all right, you knew it was like, oh, somebody else is going to die. Somebody's going to die. Somebody's going to die. And I mean, they did change it up to a degree in some angles, but and fit a story in there and everything. But I don't know. I think that's just my thing overall with this whole entire series is like I've heard the story before. Not that I've not heard all the stories before that I've already, we've read and stuff, but this one just was like, I don't know. It didn't hit me.
Right. You heard it with characters you cared about before, and these are all brand new characters, which he tried to make us care about. Some
I
of
tried to keep an open mind with them
yeah,
too. I ended up enjoying some, but overall, yeah, just
yeah. And Kevin, your thoughts on Murder World as a plot device, as a location? Did it work for you?
So I think it worked for me because this series blatantly tells you what its inspirations are. So the first three covers, the first one is Battle Royales, that Japanese movie. The second issue, I think, is the Lord of the Flies cover with Reptile. And then the third issue is like the Avengers, and I think it's supposed to be the Hunger Games type calligraphy or something like that. I can't remember quite what it is, but it's the iconography of Hunger Games on the third issue. So this, and I think that's the order. So this series is blatantly telling you, hey, yeah, we're ripping these things off because it knows that the audience is going to know, hey, you're ripping these three things off. So I think because it did that and it wasn't trying to hide it and mask that, hey, we're doing something new and fresh. Instead, it was like, hey, well, with Lord of the Flies, we're riding this 60-year-old wave of kids killing each other in fiction. I think I was able to get on board with it. I think it was fine. I was able to suspend disbelief and it worked for me.
Right, and I do think also Arcade mentions and Miss Coriander a few times, oh, I read this old book, or I read this book that all the kids are reading, and I got an idea. So he's saying
I
that
think
he
he
was
even
inspired by.
mentions. I think he or her even mentions Battle Royale at one point in time too,
Yeah.
like the
I think I
movie.
remember
Yeah.
that too. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, all right. Yeah. Yeah. Murder World was interesting. Wonder if it's still there, if maybe it's right next to the Savage Land there in Antarctica. They can, somebody, X-Men will find it one day. So, guys, let's talk about our favorite moments or maybe our least favorite moments from the story. What really sticks out to you, good, bad, or just awkward? Something that really stuck out to you when you were reading through these 18 issues. We're going to start with our good friend, Darrin,
Oh wow.
who
Good, bad, and
maybe
awkward.
we can, you can give me one of each. You could give me a
I'll go
couple.
one
You
of
could,
each.
all
Awkward.
right.
The Apex and her brother, the whole angle where they switch in and out and stuff. It's just like, and they're trying to explain it, and they explain it, and yeah, that just was a little, all right. Well, I guess it fit and served the purpose of the story, kind of. I guess I don't know. Um, I didn't think it was like there's any particular. I do want to say I don't think it was anything woke or anything like that. I just think it was a very weird character.
Yeah,
um,
yeah,
yeah,
go
that's
ahead.
all I got with that. Good. The good that I really enjoyed. I already mentioned the trigger scent, but that didn't pan out. I know we talked about characters, but I forgot to mention I did like Reptile, kind of a little like he was kind of annoying but kind of cool at the same time. Like it was always interesting to
Just
see
like
what
the superhero squad.
yeah, yeah. Just like this I was interesting to see what he was going to become next, and sometimes whatever reptilian like or dinosaur even creature that he became kind of tied in with like the situation. Well, it always to a degree did, and everything. I just thought that was cool. I thought he was an interesting character, and they used him well.
I'm
Bad.
wondering,
Wait, go ahead.
just on that note, while we have him up, do you guys think he lived? At the very end, they show them pulling a giant red dinosaur out of the water, but the way Hazmat reacts is it's kind of like he's gone. And I don't know if he's shown up since then and anything.
Well, he didn't show up with his health bars all being gone, so I assume that he's alive.
Yeah.
Okay.
But
And
isn't
Okay.
the health bars are Arcade's view? So if Arcade was gone by that point in time,
Mm.
you might not be getting those anymore.
Well, how about you just don't sass me? How about that?
Yeah.
Kevin didn't even read that issue. He doesn't know.
Yeah.
No, I don't.
Yeah.
Spoilers.
Read it like 12 years ago or something. No.
Sorry to cut you off
Back to
there.
that
What
point
else?
about Reptile though, because that just made me think of something else when you guys said brought that up about whether or not he was dead. Hazmat wasn't glowing. Remember, they're like, why wasn't she glowing? Like, did they get into that, or does that come later? I'm sure. And
In the next series, it starts off with Avengers Undercover, where like when she finally had her big blowout at the end, that she's now more in control of her powers,
okay,
and so she doesn't need the suit, or at least she didn't.
okay,
But then the last time I saw her was during Blood Hunt. She was in the Avengers with like Hercules and Captain America and Quicksilver, I think, was in it. And there was uh, Baron Blood had taken over a helicarrier, and she was in it, but she was in her suit again. So I don't know. Uh, I don't know if she's in that new Avengers book. I can't remember. There's such a big lineup on there where they all wear the jackets from Night Thrasher, which is a pretty decent book, except they all wear jackets from Night Thrasher, and that's not fun. It was like going back and reading the '90s Avengers, like, oh, this was actually pretty good, but they're all wearing jackets, and it's terrible. My joke is that was before global warming. That's why everybody had to wear jackets. You kids don't know how cold it was back in the '90s. Anyways, I'm I am babbling on. Let's find out what Jared had a favorite moment about, or a least favorite moment, or an awkward moment.
Well, I did just look up Reptile, and he showed up in King in Black.
Okay.
So who
All
knows
right.
what happened? None of us read that, obviously. But
I think I read the main story, but that's
main
about it.
story, yeah. But there were
Yeah.
so many side stories with that.
But he had his
I
own solo series 4 years ago, also.
Oh, did he?
So yeah,
Well, maybe that explained it.
Okay, so
ongoing limited series, Marvel's favorite.
I thought the Apex thing was creative. In I didn't see that coming, and then I appreciated the back and forth between like he's trying to get out and she's trying to get out, and they explain that backstory of how they couldn't leave their house because they'd have to explain to the neighbors. Uh, he could have really just kind of made it some sort of for Kevin's word, woke kind of thing. But instead, Hopeless made it like, let's do it a brother and sister and take a twist on that. And that's what I really kind of appreciate about this whole series, was probably my biggest thing that I love. None of this felt forced at all. It just seemed like they picked some loser character teenagers, threw them into Hunger Games because that's what was hot at the time. I didn't feel like diversity was pushed or relationships. It was just fun. That's what Kevin said at the beginning. Like, this was a fun read. And that's what I really just enjoyed about it. They could even do this and say like it's an alternate universe and have Arcade capture our biggest heroes, throw them in the Hunger Games and let them go at it. I would totally read something like that. Um, so I think that's what I really just appreciated, and that's why I asked this on the M6P, because I just had a fun time reading this story and wanted to see if anybody else enjoyed this book that didn't sell very well, because it was a good read.
All right. I like it. Uh, Kevin, your thoughts of what stood out to you, what moments, in at least the first 12 issues, what did you like? What did you not like?
Um, you know, I think maybe the only thing I didn't like, and this is a minor criticism, is sometimes the issues felt a little too focused. And this is more in the second volume. Like I liked in the first volume, in the first few issues, how it seemed to be from the perspective of a singular character, and you really got to know that character. Like in the first one, you really got to know Hazmat, and that was really cool. And different characters and different books as it got on, you got to actually like, know those books. And then when it got to kind of that whole Apex storyline in volume two after that standalone arcade, it seemed to kind of stick with that story for a few issues. And then all of a sudden it's Hazmat and Reptile time. And I feel like a little bit better writing could have maybe intertwined those stories, added a little bit more. And I know Darren was saying it was already stretched out, but maybe add a little bit more tension and stress to both of those storylines, give a little more drama in both of those. That would kind of be my only critique in terms of what I thought was maybe not great. In terms of I mean, like, one thing I forgot to mention is I really liked the anachronism story, the
Yeah.
character. Like, I thought he was kind of fun, just kind of this. Like, I think that was probably the character I related to the most. He was just kind of this fat, nerdy kid who liked to play video games, and then all of a sudden he turned into this like buff Viking warrior, and he
Right.
didn't know, yeah, and he didn't
Right.
really want to fight. He really didn't want to do any of that stuff, and you got to learn more about him and who he was, and yeah. Yeah, I think I really loved him. We hadn't talked enough about him yet, so I
Well,
think
we all
that's
love him.
yeah.
We just didn't want to try to pronounce his name, I think is the real, was the anachronism, anachronism, no, yeah, you're good. I'm going to go with anachronism. That
It's
sounds,
anachronism. Yeah, that's a real thing.
I
It
know,
actually
I know it's a
it,
thing. I've only read about it, though I've never heard anybody else talk about it. So the pronunciation is the tricky part there.
yeah. Yeah. So, and I actually kind of, it's a very clever name for that character too. I do like
Right.
that. So yeah, I mean, yeah, I said what I didn't like. I know there's nothing that really like stands out to me as like amazing. It's just it's just kind of consistently good and fun. And I think that's what really counts to me. No, and maybe when I read the third volume, maybe something stands out in the latter issues, but really in those first two volumes, it's just consistently good. It's really kind of just across the board. It's not leaving me, and I can see maybe that's why on a week to week base or on a month to month basis maybe I forgot about it, is because it's not leaving you with like wild crazy cliffhangers all the time.
Right.
Um,
Except for the
it,
first
it
issue.
Yeah, but I think it works better as a trade. I think it's more enjoyable in
Yeah.
that regard. I think it's a better read. It's almost built like a novel. It's not really built like a serialized story in certain regards. So, yeah, okay. So I think I've said enough.
Yeah. Well said, Kevin. Well said. And Matthew, what moments stood out for you as good, bad, weird, or otherwise?
The only thing that I felt like I was a little bit left hanging on, and not in a bad way, I just wish I had more, was just a little bit more time to learn about like Justin or Metal or Reptile. I feel like I just, as a reader and just going full board 2 days in a row on this, I felt like I just wanted to know more about them as a whole. So I just kind of had a yearning for those three characters. I felt like I got a lot on the rest. Like even from a relationship thing, I like the way that they tied in some of their relationships when they were at school, like with Apex and Kid Britain, and then Kid Britain with Nara, and then Nara's the way that she treated Anachronism when he was younger, but then the way that she actually viewed him now that he's older. And it was such like an interesting dynamic of the way people posture, the way people hide things, the way people do things, the way people present things. It was super interesting, right? Because Kid Britain would have a certain face for Apex, have a different face for Nara, would have a different face for, it was just interesting watching all of their relationships, how they were actually more intertwined in real life, and then how they intertwined differently when they were all together and with their different groupings. So I really enjoyed that. Um, I know we've all talked about Apex, but I think that one just caught me off guard in such an awesome way. Even just like that their parents were hiding them was just so diabolical and awesome and wild. I like did not see that one coming. Um, Again, I know I'm kind of going glass half full here, but I didn't feel power reading everything to the previous point about it being really enjoyable as a trade 100%, because being able to slam through issue to issue, I was just super excited going from page to page to page to page, and I just powered through, and I just felt like, man, I can't wait to do the next one. I can't wait to do the next one, and I was able not have to wait or fall off or be bored. I just kept popping through, and it was great. So.
Yeah, good
Yeah.
stuff. I'm gonna weigh in with some of mine. So I will say about the Apex, the Tim and Katie situation. That was interesting. I liked it. It was also the way Marvel's been doing transgender since the 70s. You've had Starhawk and Alita. You've had Cloud. You've had men and women sharing bodies, and that's just. I mean, I'm joking. I'm not to say that that's how they do transgenderism, but it kind of is. That's just there have been several characters in Marvel throughout Marvel's history, and those are just the two that I can think of off the top of my head. The old school Guardians of the Galaxy, Starhawk and Alita shared a body. Cloud was one of the new Defenders from the 80s, and then reawakened in the Woken era to be an actual transgender person because that's what the character was designed to be. So that's interesting. I like the way they did it, that she seemed like, a fine, upstanding citizen for the first 6, 7 issues or however long, till we found out, oh no, she's the worst one of all of them. And actually, she ended up being worse than Arcade almost. So that was pretty cool, a good character turn. I really liked, to Kevin's point about the cohesiveness of everything, this being one story that you knew. And I liked, as Matt mentioned earlier, like that issue 13, that was written by Christos Gage, who wrote Avengers Academy pretty much, right? And so it was kind of a look from Hank Pym following around from the outside world, because the outside world does not touch this story really at all. There's one issue that's completely outside of it. That's issue 13. And Kevin loves that WizKid makes tiny cameo in there on the campus of Avengers Academy because that's his favorite character. But um, and just how cool it is to have a story in today's Marvel, or 12 years ago Marvel is the same, where it's not going to be affected by crossovers or other events or other characters. Yeah, it crosses over sections of the Marvel universe itself by having runaways with X-Men, with Avengers Academy kids and Captain Britain's kids, but it's not touched by anything else. The way he built the murder world, it's an untouchable thing. It's one story. I really liked that. One thing I did not like, and I'm going to mess up who the characters exactly were. There was, I know Cammi was there. I think she's the one that said this. Maybe Nara, who Nara is Atlantean, and they make her like her only power is she breathes water. I don't know why she wouldn't be more Namorita-ish, if not Namor, maybe slightly less, but she should have be a little bit stronger. But they're all going to fight when Apex, Katie has the Sentinel and she's coming, and they're, do we run or do we fight? And they're like, well, Nico's got to make the case because she's the only one of us that could fight him. And then and the rest of them just run away. Like, you don't want to team up. You don't want to try some of your moves. You got your blaster. You got, you have this. They're just like, no, she's going to fight. We can't. And Nico gets her butt handed to her, which was a cool moment too, with her leg broken and sticking out. And then she had to grasp her staff and come back. So anyways, I'm rambling too, but there was a lot to like about it. Those were some of the moments that stuck out to me. And
John,
yeah.
just to correct you real quick, it's Screet is my favorite character in the Marvel Universe. Thank you.
Well, I didn't say, oh yeah, I guess I did say he's your favorite, but Street with WizKid, I mean, that could be a duo. They could team up one day, and
We've had some good
when
ones
it's
we've read
Assistant
about, haven't
Editors
we?
Month.
Get
What's
ready. That's
that?
going to be the M6P website is all my fan fiction on those two characters.
I love it. I love it. All right, guys. On that note, does anybody have anything else that stuck out that they want to talk about that we did not talk about in this line of questions? Jared, you
Yeah,
remembered.
I'll say, yeah, I did. Thank you. Grandpa's memory isn't what it used to be. When there was a guest artist, I found that kind of threw me off, especially in trade form. The art was very distinct, and
Oh
then
yeah.
having somebody new jump in, it's like, wait, what's going on?
Wow.
So that threw me. But what I really enjoyed was the different team ups. The people that were together in issue 1 and 2, they didn't end up like they all took turns being in different groups and being split up and then coming together and uniting against another group, and then this group they split up and they unite. And I really liked that they were able to not, for 18 issues, it wasn't the same groups always going against each other. It was very much all over the place. I think that really strengthened the characters because you got to see how they interacted with allies, with people that they had never met, and with enemies, and then how they would all work together. I just thought that was pretty brilliant on Hopeless's part.
I'd
Yeah.
like to say that I think Kev Walker's work in this book is spectacular. He's got a clean house style, but it's also feels very like classic. You can definitely tell that he has inspiration from Kirby and Romita Sr. and guys like that. I loved his style. It felt modern and fresh, but there was also very much uh, a classical taste to it, or classical comic taste to it that you could sense, and I really appreciated what he was doing. And so just to reiterate Jared's point, it was very distracting whenever the guest artists would come in, because even if they were good, it just like Kev Walker was really knocking it out of the park.
Yeah, he's got a very distinct style. It almost reminds me like if it's Steve Dillon doing a book, or one of these guys that are just, it's him. You can almost not mistake him. The thing,
Oh, there's
going,
a point to that. What you said, Steve Dillon. I did notice a few of the small character moments. Like
Mhm.
his art really did look like Steve Dillon a few
Yeah,
times. The way he was drawing faces. Yeah.
yeah. And I think this book was coming out at the time twice a month, so he wasn't going to be able to pencil 18 issues in in just over a year or whatever, however long it took. I think they said it came out over the course of about a year. So, yeah, the other guys weren't bad either, but they weren't him, and he's so distinct. It's hard to cover that up from one issue to the next.
Also, to back up on Jared's point about like the different groups, I enjoyed the different groups' dialogue. I never felt like I was getting exhausted from a group. You know, like you're with a group for a long time or too long. You're like, oh man, I'm tired of these interactions or the way they're talking. I never got tired of any group's interactions because before you knew it, there was a different group, there was a different set, there was different back and forth, there was different banner, there was different relationships. They all had these little different moments of clarity from things that were said in the past or things that were done. So it kept me hooked with all the different groupings. Yes, from an action, yes, from a storytelling, but also from a dialogue, perspective.
And I think that speaks to what Kevin was saying earlier. This was not teenagers giving quips every. If you were to read, if this was written today, it would be sarcasm, and you'd think that Bendis wrote it. But this was really, really good dialogue.
Right.
Yeah, it was just
I
them
even liked
complaining the whole
Cammy's
time.
nicknames for everybody. Sorry, Darren, go ahead.
Yeah, I said, yeah, that was a good dialogue. It was just, not quips, but they sure were complaining all the time.
You would
Being
too.
stuck in
in
murder
Murder
world can be
World.
I
fun.
tried. Hey, I gave it a chance. I didn't like it. What can I say? Shoot me.
They're in Murder World and they're complaining. How dare they?
Right.
This book
Instead
on
of trying
Murder
to fix the
World.
situation,
My kids
like
complain in Disney
They're a
World. I
bunch of
couldn't
kids
imagine what they'd
complaining,
say.
stuck in Murder World.
they don't know
Scumbags.
how to work together. The first thing they do is like we're all going to try to kill each other. We better figure out what we got to do because we're all going to kill each other. They're
Yeah.
superheroes. Go find the bad guy for Pete's sake. There.
Red Raven, she flies right into the sky and hits and dies.
Oh, that was great. Hold
Yeah.
on, that was great.
I think
man.
for our next back to books, we need to make Darren read Lord of the Flies so he understands what's actually going on in this series.
I understand what's going on perfectly fine. That's why I was annoyed by it all. Yes.
Yeah.
Next read, we'll do something focused on Jubilation Lee. We know it'll make Darren happy. We know it'll
Right.
she's his favorite, so we'll just go that route.
Yeah, at least she
Right.
was.
Why wasn't she on Murder World? She could have been murdered first, Darren
I would have
says.
rooted for her over all of them. Oh,
All right. Well, I'm going to start with Darren because I know how this is going to go. But our new back to books grading system, Matthew, you only get 3 choices. We're not doing half points. We're not doing 1 to 10. We're grading this on an M for a masterpiece, a 6 because it's about a 6 out of 10 or 12, or a P because it's poor. It's poor quality. So, Darren, on the M6P scale, what are you rating for the M6P fans at home watching? What are you
I'm
giving?
not going to give it a P
Avengers
because
Arena.
I'm not going to give it a P because even though I didn't like it, I mean, I still kept. Like I said, I kept reading it. Obviously it's not that bad. My colleagues here all seem so. I can't just give it like it's not. It wasn't poorly done, is what I'm saying. So I'll give it a 6. I just didn't like it.
Okay, that's fair. Very fair.
I
Kevin,
can't give it a P.
That's what she said.
Right. Kevin, you got an M, a 6, or a P for us?
Yeah, I don't think it's a masterpiece. It's really fun, and I would really recommend people giving it a shot, especially in trade format. I think it's a lot of fun, but I think it's a 6. I think a 6 out of 10 is a pretty fair for this.
Yeah. Okay. Matthew, do you understand the grading assignment?
I do. I'm gonna go with an M. Reason being is again, they set the table of this is, an isolated kind of, an isolated story. They set the table of what it is, what the expectations are gonna be. The art was exquisite, the writing was great. All the characters ended up being an absolute blast to watch, right? Like we kind of get in this, at least for me, I sometimes get in my head where I have to compare everything to everything all the time, and there has to be some peak, everything has to be A or B or C or D. And sometimes I just need to take a step back and think, if I didn't know anything else and I was just enjoying this as as a person who just wants to enjoy a really good read, a really good story, something fun that's going to make my morning, afternoon, or evening better. Is this going to make my evening better by reading? Is it going to be fun and enjoyable? the answer is totally yes. Like it's an absolute blast to read. So, are there other things better than it? Sure. But also as a standalone, total M for me for sure.
Very good. And Jared?
What
We
I
got
think I have a
two
new
sixes and a nine.
I have
Go
a new
ahead.
philosophy after hearing Matthew. Whenever I do something, I'm going to say, is this going to make my evening better? And I'm going to do that at work too. If I get assigned something, I'm just going to say, is this going to make my day better? Do I bother with this? I
Right.
like I gotta agree with everything that he said. This is an M for me. I think this could be a really good cartoon. I think this could be one of those Marvel specials. It's an hour and a half. You don't have to know a lick about any of the characters, but it's just fun. And I think that anybody could pick this up, not knowing about Avengers Academy or who Spider-Man is, and this is a good time. So I had a really good time rereading this.
I'll tell you what, Jared, I like that idea because I am not looking forward to the MCU's Young Avengers, but if they said they were basing it on the plot of Avengers Arena with characters that have been introduced, I would be excited off because I want some of them to be killed off, and some of them I might grow to like over the course of it. You could actually do that with the characters, just trade out the faces and the places. That could be interesting. I'm also going to give it an M. Right. I understand, Kevin. It is not a masterpiece. That is what M should be. But with the three-letter system, with one or two-letter system and one number system, I'm going to say that if it's better than a 6 out of a 10 for sure. It's closer. It may not be a 10 out of a 10, but it is really good. It made my evenings better while I read it. I read it twice within probably a year and a half since the first post about it, and was happy to read it again so we could talk about it. I made sure to read Avengers Undercover because I really liked Kev Walker and Dennis Hopeless working together, and these characters grew on me. So yeah, I'm going to give it an M. And we hope you guys check it out. And we hope you don't forget to check out, in the meantime, between now and our next Back to Books, it's going to be about this little gem of a classic. Some call this one a masterpiece already. It's called the Dark Phoenix Saga, kids. That's what we're going to be talking about next time. And until next time, make yours the M6P.